So our office is downtown Calgary. Is that right?
Correct.
Absolutely. And how many people have we got in the office that you're working with day to day?
Well, we in Canada we are a team of five. Very soon we'll be a team of six. One is based in around Ontario and Waterloo, and the rest are all based here in the Calgary office. So
Amazing.
we are four here, currently four in the Calgary office. One will be starting in either mid-May or beginning of June, and then one back east.
Amazing. Thanks very much for joining us, Werner. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, and how are you doing? It's great to
Yeah,
be on.
excellent. Doing very well in what is a very grey London. The joke is always made, but it's really grey, um,
Oh,
and
you, you
grim and cold.
You must come to Calgary. There, if you want different weather, you wait an hour and you'll have different weather.
Well, yeah. So that brings me nicely onto to a bit of an introduction, actually, which is to say this is Werner Kruger, who is our managing director in Canada, based in Calgary. Uh, how is Calgary at this time?
Awesome. It's actually very nice. It's busy. I always joke and say that especially in Calgary, we have two seasons. We have winter and we have construction. So everything downtown is just construction, especially leading up to the Stampede, where I think they just want to get everything ready. And so it's nice outside, but it's chaos if you're on the rail.
Yeah. When is Stampede? Because I am fascinated by this as an event. I
It's
absolutely
during
love it.
June. I can't remember the exact dates, but yes, it is. Calgary is very much focused on that, and I mean they do the decor in the windows, and everybody have breakfast during the Stampede in different places in the city, and the big band and parade throughout the city. It's huge.
Yeah, it's such a good event, isn't it? I've had friends who've gone, and I'm desperate to go at some point. Um, I'm sure we can find some valid work reason to get me there for Stampede.
It's well worth it.
Yeah,
It's very well.
absolutely. And obviously, you've mentioned construction, so we're straight into extended ECM for engineering, I'm sure, uh, and letting people know that exists. But what's the you've been in sort of Calgary for a while now. Um, do you think there are specific requirements that come in that region? I mean, we joke about energy, but it's a huge energy city, right?
Yes, I think energy, oil and gas is huge especially in Alberta, but especially in Calgary. There are so many of the large companies that have their headquarters, or at least have a presence here in Calgary. A lot of oil exploration, pipeline companies, or oil producing companies, and so the engineering content is quite a large part of the normal day-to-day business. So I do think that I've seen it more in Calgary than in any of the other places where I've worked or where I've been involved with in OpenText, that the need for engineering content and managing engineering content is so much bigger here in this industry.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, when you find cities that have real links to certain industry. Um, you can liken it to Houston, for example, or sort of in a way Dallas and some of the Texas cities as well. Um, so our office is downtown Calgary. Is that right?
Correct.
Absolutely. And how many people have we got in the office that you're working with day to day?
Well, we in Canada we are a team of five. Very soon we'll be a team of six. One is based in around Ontario and Waterloo, and the rest are all based here in the Calgary office. So
Amazing.
we are four here, currently four in the Calgary office. One will be starting in either mid-May or beginning of June, and then one back east.
Amazing. Back east, like in my head, that's not very far, but it's actually really far, isn't it?
It is. I'm still trying to get my head around just how huge this country is, and that it's closer to fly from Toronto to Europe than to fly from Calgary to Toronto, and it is a huge country. But it's a beautiful country.
Yeah, it's amazing. I've been lucky enough to spend a bit of time there, but you're right. It is being from the UK. I don't scale is something I'm not necessarily used to until you land there and go. So where's the nearest other person? Um, it's a big place.
it gets interesting when you organize a meeting because I mean we have customers in Vancouver that's on Pacific time zone, we're on Mountain time zone, and then we sometimes work with our team in Europe and we work with our team in India. So organizing and scheduling meetings can get quite interesting. And
Yeah.
but I mean I think that's one thing that I've seen in Turnpikes, and I think that we are very good at is aligning with these time zones because of our resources sometimes working across time zones on different projects.
Yeah, it's important, isn't it? We've always said we're a global company, um, and this is where we really prove it. And we're not just global because we sell to people globally. We've got people all over the world, um, which is really important because there are intricacies to the region, right? There are certain sort of things to be very cognizant of. Legal contracts, for example, are different. Um, and that's something we deal with. Not only do we deal with it at a business level, but we also deal with it at client level as well, right? If we're dealing with content management systems, then it's important to know what's specific to your region, right?
Yeah, if you look, I think in ECM, there's maybe less differences than, for instance, with VIM, where you have very specific Canadian tax regulations and settings that you have to take in consideration when you configure something like VIM for a customer that is specific to Canada. We, for instance, are not very big on the e-invoicing, which I know is huge in Europe. So I think the product a product like Vim lends itself more to region specifics, where content management, there's certain very ground principles that's in place and is generally similar in areas. You might have different things when it comes to retention or the legal requirements for how you store documents and how long you keep it, which comes into play very much into your records management and how you design your content management system. But the actual processing side and optimizing your processes, I feel is not that different in North America and then specifically in Canada than it is for Europe.
Yeah, there are fundamentals at the base of all of this, and we discuss them a lot. Um, and that is realistically efficient work comes from being able to get to the right information at the right time when you need it.
Yeah.
That's specific or not specific. That is the foundation of it all, right?
Yeah, I always use example when I speak to customers when we talk about archiving and content management is the principle of garbage in, garbage out
Yeah.
is more true and more relevant than people think. Because they sometimes think of when you talk about garbage in, garbage out of totally invalid documents. But the garbage, if I can call it like that, goes much further than that. It is also, are you connecting the correct metadata and the classifications to a document? Are you being able to efficiently and effectively get to that content in the right way and expose it and protect it to the right group of people?
Mm.
When we talk about, and I think that's also a little bit the difference between just general content management and when we start talking about managing engineering content, where there's so much more involved in your transmittals, in your concurrent engineering, because companies don't always have this whole group of people that will actually work with the engineering drawings. The practice is more that they would contract that out to external parties, and then how you manage that data and make it available, how you share that information and make sure that you have this one single source of truth, that becomes so important. And I think as we move into the AI era, that will become critical, that we work, that the data that this is founded on is accurate, is correct, and is accessible and protected by the right group and for the right groups of people.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack in that, and I think you're exactly right. The foundations of AI is garbage in, garbage out, and now that phrase, if I'm honest, I first heard that phrase maybe 20 years ago. Um,
Very old phrase.
but it hasn't changed, and that,
No.
like, in a way, that sort of annoys me because I feel like it should have done, but it hasn't because it's still completely relevant and makes sense. Um, and I've realised now that maybe 20 years ago I might have been responsible for some of that garbage going into projects I was working on. I'm much more experienced now. When it comes to engineering companies, they are unique, right? In if we talk about them in the document management space, they are unique because they have a requirement, as you say, for third-party suppliers a lot of the time. Certainly off-site access to information, CAD drawings or really intricate documents that need to be accessed, updated for compliance, regulation, efficiency, productivity, and fundamentally, bottom line finances. Um, is that the case? Do you have more of those conversations, you think, in Calgary than we would in Europe?
I think so, yes. And the thing with I mean, things like contracts are very important. And if you mess up with a contract and you can't produce the right contract, that can have legal consequences. When you talk about engineering content and sometimes the operational procedures and operational documents that goes hand in hand with sometimes your engineering content, there is so much more at stake because then the whole health and safety comes into play because people need to go work on these pipelines or on these pumps or on these power stations. And they need to know that what they work on and is the correct thing. And then if they need to replace a part or if they need to interact with that, that it is correct. There can be really severe consequences if that is not correct. And it can really cripple an organization if you have, let's say you have a rollout and you're building a new pipeline or you're expanding some of your operations, if you don't have the correct information there, I think it's far more critical than, and I'm not playing down on invoice management, but an invoice being paid 30 days late or 60 days late, yes, you will have an unhappy customer, but the company or the business will not grind to a halt if that happens. But there can really, really be dire consequences if those engineering documents are not accessible and are not the correct version. If you expect something to be there because that's a drawing you're looking at, but it is 2 revisions behind, that can really have some dire consequences. So I think the value of managing your engineering content has a higher priority than something like contracts or some of your other content that we normally see. And it's also, I think, important to know that there's most of the large enterprise companies that are using extended easy engineering. Engineering is one part of their business. They still have your general content, so it's always a wider picture. And we find that a lot of these companies will use the extended easy engineering, but will also use content server for managing the supporting type of content that's not engineering specific, that you don't have to take through revision control, that you don't have to have as a managed revision type of document, but you still need to have it related. So in your project workspace, you may have these documents that you may not treat in as revisions, but it's still related to that content and important for that content.
Yeah. And so let's go into that a bit further. Thanks very much for watching. If you'd like to see more from us, check out other content on our YouTube channel. You can also follow us on social media, or you can visit us at www.turnpikes.pro. Feel free to subscribe to get upcoming notifications of our new content, and we look forward to seeing you very soon.